What do you think, Dan? We ready to go? Okay. I would call the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting of May 7th to order.
Yeah.
Your roll call, John Reiner.
Here.
Jim Kearns. Here. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
Carolyn Campbell.
Here.
Joseph Gademauer.
Here.
And I am here, so all are present except Lou. We'll move on to the minutes for the
Move to approve.
April 2nd meeting.
Second it.
Moved by Mr. Gademauer, seconded by Carl. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes from the April 2nd meeting? No discussion, we'll go to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We'll go to public comment. John, would you check the sheet down there?
I see nothing.
Nothing. It's okay, Scott.
Nothing.
No public comment.
Wow.
We'll move on to members' comments. Do any of the members have comments? Do any of the members have comments this morning? Okay. Oh, I have a comment. This morning, we've been asked by one of the interviewees to move the deliberations till the end of our day today because she's traveling and she isn't sure when she can join us. So if that's okay with you guys, we would have the interviews as they're scheduled and then possibly put off the deliberation until after we do our rest of our stuff. And there's gonna be a little presentation on spongy moss from Scott and that kind of stuff. So if that's okay, we would do that. So we can move on to noon business. It's 8:30. And it is the interviews, and Rachel Thomas would be our 8:30 interview. And she possibly was going to be virtual, but we don't have her virtual. And if she's driving, she might be slowed up for 5 minutes. So we can sort of fudge this around for a couple minutes. And
You hear about spongy moss.
spongy moss, Scott, you can do it now? Still rating.
I know we can hardly all wait, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this will be a high-level report, but spongy moths have hatched. We're at the time of year. They're in a stage called the first instar, so they're about the size of hairs. Real small, but they have hatched. Because they're so small, we're not sure what the population looks like at this point in time. So that's really under review. In fact, the telltale is going to be just the level of defoliation that is seen. Illinois Department of Agriculture is doing some spraying in Joe Daviess County. It's where they're going to focus their solar spread efforts. We did get a report that Hendricks Flying Service, which really does the spray, is spraying areas in Lake Geneva. If you recall, last year we talked about the moth blow, which is a significant amount of population that was pushed, kind of a little bit south and east into Wisconsin, affected McHenry County. So it looks like they're working to address that concentration that they saw in Walworth County and around Lake Geneva area. So I know what's on everybody's mind is, did we have a warm, wet spring that's conducive to the entomophaga mimi, which is the fungus that is really fatal to the spongy moss? We're cautiously optimistic. We did have a pretty good spring. It was warm, it was wet. Getting a little bit more of that rain today, right now. So that's under review, and we're hoping that it actually is going to pan out. We're cautiously optimistic on the fungus that's going to really decimate the populations. And just a couple high-level reports. Even though we're not taking an active role in spongy moss, one thing that we committed to was participating in the tracking program to continue to collect data. I spoke to Nancy Johnson with the Department of Agriculture about traps. She actually has a much more limited supply than she had in previous years. A lot of her areas are going to be focusing in on trapping, but she said whatever they have left would be available to us. So we are going to do some outreach to our citizen scientists to say, if you would like a trap, let us know. We can put them on a list and try to get whatever traps we have available out into our community, just so we can keep a tab on our population. With that, final thing, and this is a cautionary tale to everybody here and anybody listening. Please be mindful when you move firewood or really anything outdoors, because spongy moths can lay their eggs on that piece of firewood that you take from here to your neighbors 4 towns over, and now you may inadvertently introduce a spongy moth population to a place that otherwise wouldn't. We've also put that piece of outreach out there in our Thrive newsletter, as well as other pieces of social media. So, but just be mindful when you move things. Look for spongy moths. Usually, it's a telltale sign is that the white spongy type egg mass. But if they hatched, they're going to be on the move. So there may be spongy moths in that piece of firewood that you don't even see. That's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, when will they be of the size that we'll be getting reports from the public or calls or whatever?
So probably towards the end of this month, into early June, based on the early hatch. So that's what we're targeting. The first instar, they're not doing too much, but they grow pretty quickly. And once they get probably the size of about an 1.5 inches or so, then they can really do some damage. So probably we're going to monitor that. I'm going to keep in touch with Nancy Johnson just to find out where things are at. Nancy did indicate that she received some emails. She thinks they may be from McHenry County residents, but she's going to check, and if they are, she's going to forward those to me, and I'll stay in touch with any of our residents that are concerned.
Okay, anyone else have anything? Carl?
You mentioned there's going to be a limited supplies of traps. What's the criteria for getting any of those traps?
Well, first, depending on how many we have, I think really we're going to look at, is it an area where we saw a high population last year? If you remember all the data we collected, we maybe just want to monitor
like
those hotspots.
Or some that we had in Johnsburg area.
Correct.
Like to get one back there.
Exactly.
Or up to Spring Grove or Ringwood, in the dense area.
Spot on. That's how I would prioritize it. If we saw a high population previously, I'd want to focus on trap or traps there. Just so
If you can, when you get them, give me a call and we'll work something out.
Fantastic. I appreciate that help and the assistance. And just a reminder, trapping isn't to catch them and kill them. Trapping is really only for data collection. So, when you say trap, it's not like we're trying to eradicate the population with it. It's only just a way we can determine what that population is. So, I'll be clear about that.
Not that it matters, but my Wisconsin friends in the woods have noted that they're out there also and voiced their displeasure, but Wisconsin is not spraying the state of Wisconsin. The governor has decided not to spray Wisconsin at all. So
This year?
if they are doing it, it's countywide but it's not on a state level.
When I mentioned Lake Geneva, Walworth County, and Nancy had indicated that's actually private spray.
Yeah,
So
I would believe that.
I appreciate that tidbit.
Yeah.
Okay, and anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Scott, for the
All right.
update on that.
The 840 candidate, Mr. McCue, is here.
Okay,
Bring him in.
yeah, we'll interview Mr. McCue right now. We don't have Rachel virtually either yet.
No, and I did just send her an email
Okay,
asking status.
okay,
I want to remind everybody, we have 2 spots available on the Conservation District today as you're thinking about candidates.
Any preference of where you'd like to sit?
yeah, right there, Mr. McCue is fine. Please introduce yourself and let us know why you would be interested in a position with the Conservation District. That would be
My
great.
name is Gerald McCue. I live in Johnsburg, Illinois. I had been using the Conservation District for the last 15 years, I think, 2010, 14 years or so. I love everything about the programs. Want to make sure it keeps going for my kids and my grandkids.
Okay. Any of the committee members have questions for Mr. McCue? Go ahead, Joe.
I see you've participated in the Deer Hunter program.
Yes.
So long time ago. I was on the board when it started, so I'd like to hear how it works for you.
Can you speak
I
up?
was on the conservation board when it started
Okay.
20 years or 15 years ago, at least more than 15, I think
Yes.
now. And I was just curious how you like that program or don't like the program, what would you see change about it?
I like it a lot. It's the best place you could lease a property, if you will, for the money. I mean, the program's getting bigger and bigger every year. More and more people are coming into the program, and they have to deny more and more people every year. It's almost like there's not enough space. But as far as they have the program under control very well. It's,
So could you tell us a little bit about the program? It's
The deer hunting program?
One time it was $250, and you put your own stand up and.
You know, so I don't know the exact cost. It's $170 out of my pocket.
Okay.
I have 2 other people in our group, so multiply that by 3. If we get in the lottery and get the place, we usually get it from October 1st to January 14th. That's 4 months of being out and watching the wildlife. Now, we don't always harvest deer, but you know, it's nice to see them walk around. We've had a lot of opportunities and a lot of encounters, if you will, but it's a great program.
Is it something you'd like to see more of, or do you think it's adequate the way they use the Conservation District land for deer hunting and other things?
Oh, for other things as well, yes. I think there's enough space now, but I don't know if there's room to grow space for the hunting program or not. That's not my call. They started a spring turkey program for the youth. There's only three zones available. This year they had to turn away kids because there wasn't enough opportunity.
But that would be gun, right?
Pardon?
The turkey would be guns, shotguns?
That's shotguns in the
Deer
spring.
was bow, strictly bow, wasn't it, or am I wrong?
No deer. I strictly do bow at the
Okay.
conservation, but there is also 2 gun seasons.
Okay,
One at Glacial Park, Rush Creek, and then there's a few sites where they have, there's the late deer seasons where they try and take care of the CWD. There's 2 gun seasons, and off the top of my head, I think there's maybe 8 zones that you could do gun or bow during that time.
okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Go ahead, Gerald.
With the conservation, I know that they're really active with the youth when we get down to the Crystal Lake, Lake in the Hills and out west. But up where you and I live in Johnsburg, you have an envision of bringing the youth in to, you know, educate them, getting them more active up in our area?
Well, we have the, at Glacial Park, there's summer camps.
But more knowledge within, you know, the Johnsburg,
Or letting the
McHenry.
people know.
Yeah, or getting them involved and letting them know about how great the conservation area is all the way to the border.
Yeah, we could try. I mean, we could push it. So, my kids took, I don't know how many camps at Glacial Park, but yeah, we went to the maple syrup thing in Coral Woods. That's quite a drive from one side of the county to the other, but it's good. It'd be better to get more stuff up by us.
Mm-hmm.
But Cary's not too far from us either.
Have you been to a Conservation District meeting?
I have not.
None, okay. You'd be available to attend the meetings, and this is a 5-year term, I believe?
Yes, I will be available. I would make myself available.
Anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Carolyn.
You talked about challenges in here, about sharing the conservation open space with the different groups. Can you expand on that? Or is there, like, do you feel like there's an issue with personnel?
Well, there's a lot of shared use paths, and last fall I heard of an issue of a snowmobile trail running in through a waterfall hunting location. I'm not a waterfall hunter. It didn't affect me, but it affects some of those guys. Come to find out, I think there's an eagle's nest in the vicinity where they couldn't even move the trail to anyways. But it'd be nice for everybody to share the trails.
Anyone else have anything? Okay, Mr. McCue, thank you very much for applying. We do have 7 applicants for 2 positions.
Okay,
So we don't know how this is going to work out yet this
all right,
morning.
thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for coming in.
Thank you.
Your Halma is here.
And we would ask Kate Halma to come in.
Oh my gosh, it got crazy.
Yeah, good.
you.
Good morning.
Morning, Kay.
If you would please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like this position on the Conservation Board.
Sure. My name is Kate Halma. I'm a resident of Woodstock, Illinois. I've been here nearly 37 years. Came here after college because my family moved here, and I'm the only one still here. You may have seen on my application years ago, I did work for the Conservation District. That's how I know Joe from way back. It was honestly one of the best jobs I've ever had. I was proud of the people I worked with. I was proud to promote the good work that they have done. I do continue to believe that our Conservation District is one of the greatest benefits to this community. Not everyone understands that. I'm sure the board knows, struggles with that almost daily. And I would be honored to come back and serve in this role, having served as a staff member for the Conservation District, and to help further connect the community that the district serves and help folks understand more clearly the great benefits of the Conservation District.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Jim.
From the time that you worked there, what changes have you seen in the Conservation District, and what changes would you like to see?
I will say I was there during a time of growth, and yet I know that additional lands have been purchased. I do believe as our county has grown, more people understand the benefits of the Conservation District. Many years ago, you could pretty much draw a line down the center of McHenry County, and it was developed on the east side and very rural on the west. And we all know here that things have continued to change in the county as a whole, and I think as more people move to McHenry County and call it home, again, I believe more people understand the need to acquire and protect open lands. So at least from my standpoint, that struggle to help residents understand the reason to support it isn't as extreme as it was back then. And I would only hope to continue with this team to continue to raise that awareness. I believe there's a referendum coming up. I have positive experience with referendums. They can be a huge challenge, or you can look at it as an opportunity to educate the public that you serve, to engage with more residents, and that, I believe, strengthens your purpose. Sure.
Anyone else, Carolyn?
So you list out some challenge, so in the application, everybody listed out the challenges, and sometimes that particular section is treated a little bit differently depending on the applicant. And sometimes it will read more of like opportunities versus actual challenges. So I'm hearing a lot about you want to feel that the need to reach out to the community and educate them on the benefits of the conservation. Are you seeing that as more of an opportunity, or do you think that that is not currently working, or like that's a challenge or a problem, the word isn't getting out? Or are you seeing that more as an opportunity that we need to engage more, or whatever? I'm just trying to figure out, are you seeing it as an opportunity, or do you see it as currently as a challenge or a problem?
I see it as an opportunity. I believe it was a bigger challenge decades ago. Now more people, as I mentioned earlier, I believe are more aware of the Conservation District. And once people understand and participate in programmings and services, they too get on board and understand the significance. But I would look to raising awareness as an opportunity, because I've never met a person who discovers what the Conservation District offers and then is dissatisfied. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
Interesting. I see you serve on another board right now. isn't it, would you have to vacate that seat?
Which board are you referring to? Because I did just finish up.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yes, I'm currently not on a board.
Okay.
So I have a question, and this is one I'll just, not an easy question to answer, I suspect, but
Okay.
what do I tell my neighbor who's a farmer that when he tells me the conservation district has way too much land and what the heck they doing?
That was a challenge decades ago, and I'm sure it continues to be. I think our farmers understand the significance of our land more than anyone. And to bring them in as a partner and work with them and help them understand, again, they know better than anyone, the use of the land and how things need to change over time. When I was at the Conservation District, that's when they remeandered the Nipper Sink. And it had been altered decades prior, I believe in the 20s, to bring water to the cattle. Well, then that began to cause damage from the water source as well as damage to the land. So I believe bringing together farmers with Conservation District as a team, as task forces, as folks to help each other understand better the different sides could help benefit. There's always going to be individuals who don't believe the other side, no matter what topic you're discussing. But how we approach our farmers and express that we understand they have information to share as well as we do, they can benefit from the knowledge of the natural resource staff at the Conservation District, and we can benefit from better understanding how they use the earth and how we can save land, continue to save land in McHenry County.
Excellent answer.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have anything?
No, as Kate said, I've known Kate for 20-some years, so.
And still acknowledges it. Thanks, Joe.
Well, Kate, thank you very much for coming in. We have 7 people applying for 2 positions.
I heard Chris Dom told me.
We're blessed with 7 very good applicants, so
It's a nice problem to have,
yes,
a good
it's
challenge.
for us. So we'll see where this goes, but thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you, I appreciate the opportunity. Good luck. Ooh, bye-bye.
Michael Szurek? Nobody. Maybe we don't have 7 applicants this morning. We have nothing. Dan, you have anything for us?
Or a little ahead of schedule.
We did Spongy Moss.
We could do zoning applications.
We could talk spongy moss all day.
Yeah, I know you could.
Wow.
Okay. Renee, would you like to go on with the ZBA report stuff?
Sure.
We've got the conditional use discussion too.
Yeah, well, I thought this was gonna be a little bit shorter.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
In case somebody comes in, we
Much
can
faster.
All good.
fit them in because that's gonna be a little bit more discussion.
Yep.
Renee, I have a letter from the city of Crystal Lake. Is that referring to one of them that's on our
It
list
is.
here this morning?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have 7 petitions before you this time. And Crystal Lake has filed an objection to the first one on your list, which is Prairie Enterprises. That's part of the Flowerwood property, the part that is not being contemplated for annexation. They came in and asked for from B1 zoning to B3 zoning. Their intention is to do self-storage there, and Crystal Lake is opposed to that use. They got a recommendation for approval from our zoning board 6-0, and as you know, this is straight rezoning, so you really shouldn't consider their contemplated use. They could do, once it was rezoned, they can do anything in the B3 zoning district, but the way the zoning board felt about it is it's right on 14 at a busy intersection, so what better place to have B3 zoning? Crystal Lake is opposed, which means it's a map amendment. It will push it to a supermajority vote. There you go. So then we have one simple 3-acre A1 to A2. We have 3 solar farms. They range from 20 acres to 70 acres. They also, 2 of the solar farms got a 7-0 approval from the zoning board. One got a 6-0 approval. Then we have the Shea family. Their property is currently zoned A1CV. It's a long, skinny property with lots of frontage on McCollum Lake Road. So they currently have a landscape business with outdoor storage, but they want to rezone to the E1 estate residential so that they can divide the property. I don't know if it would require subdivision or if they could actually do it through the Plat Act, because it does have a lot of frontage along McCollum Lake.
So they're gonna give up the landscape business?
Yes, they are. They're gonna give up the landscape business and hope to divide. I think they're thinking they could get 2 additional lots, so it would be 3 lots.
How big is that property again?
That's a good question that I didn't write down in my notes. It's probably, I'm guessing, 5 to 7 acres. Yeah. But they won't get that many lots. But they did ask for the E1 just so they have the most flexibility. And then the one that's going to be a little bit confusing is Topple is the applicant. So it's an A1 property, and they want to rezone part of it from A1 to B3 for their off-site service business. I believe it's a plumbing contractor. And then there's a farmhouse on the property as well. They wanted to rezone that to A2 because I guess their elderly family members live there. So they just wanted to have that remain residential for as long as those current residents needed to reside there. The property, the zoning board decided the B3 is appropriate for the area, because it's a developing area, but they decided that A2 is inappropriate in that area. So they voted to recommend approval of the B3 portion, but denial of the A2 portion. So then what happens, that'll just remain A1. It will be probably, I guess the lot would be illegal non-conforming, but as long as the residence is there and it's maintained, doesn't sit abandoned, then they'll be able to continue to use it. If it burns down, they couldn't rebuild it. And the applicant understands that and was okay with that, so.
What's the rationale for not having an A2? I don't
It's
understand it. I mean, our A2 is basically you have ag land and it's got a house on it, you ought to be able to convert it.
So the property is, do you pull up the location of that? The 2030 land use plan showed the whole area as commercial, and they felt that the existing A2 there is just kind of a situation that's always been there, but to actually rezone to perpetuate the A2 use wasn't appropriate because the area was changing to commercial. So you would have this one farmhouse permanently there. If you don't approve it, then it's non-conforming. The people can use it the way that they want to use it, but then it goes away.
When the fire happens, they come back here for another pitch.
So can we vote on these separately? It's one applicant, but 2.
That's the question that I have for you guys, because currently the way that the zoning coordinator wrote the ordinance, she put both of them in one ordinance. So I don't know.
Can we divide it on the board?
I would think on the floor, we could amend it to exclude the one and approve the other without doing anything, if that was the
Staff about that. Call Norm.
norm.
So can I ask for clarification then on that? If they're together and we're approving it, are we approving what they did Do you know what I'm saying?
So the
Or-
Well, you could
recommendation,
almost amend the vote to approve their recommendation too, I would imagine.
We're approving what they
Either way.
approved.
Yeah.
I think it would go either way. We
Right.
could
It's
decide to agree with the
supermajority, right?
ZBA or disagree with the ZBA.
Right, no, I know we could, but I'm
Denial
wondering if
on
it's in the ordinance as it is.
I think we have to change it.
If one's denied, it requires a supermajority now. If it's together.
yeah, I
Well, the
guess
one
so.
section, yeah.
We're gonna have to, we'll do a little work on that, because that's,
It'd be easier if we could divide it.
yeah.
Yeah, it would
That
be.
was my concern when I saw that she put them together. That's gonna be confusing, so we'll do some work on that.
Just for conversation, Joe, for you, the A1 to A2V, do you have I mean, under A1, could they just keep the house there
Well,
until?
the problem happens if something happens to the house.
Yeah, that's,
It also
right, if
makes
it
it
burns down, it's
uninsurable.
not getting replaced.
The other issue happens is the insurance companies won't insure it.
That's the problem. I had.
Okay, so they're asking us for
You have
insurance
it
purposes.
damaged, if your house is damaged by whatever, flood, fire, what have you, and it gets to 50%, I think is the rule, but it could be a different percentage. The county won't let you rebuild, which means you have a total loss, and insurance companies don't like to insure for total losses. So they generally won't insure it.
So either we give that to them or they're uninsurable if they keep it.
Well, did they not have insurance now?
They do have insurance now, but when they change this B3, this will be non-conforming. and
Because they're
illegal
denying it,
use.
yeah.
So they won't be able to get, their insurance will get canceled, once the insurance company figures
Wait,
it out.
the B3 is improved, you're talking about the
I-
A2.
Right,
Yeah.
A2.
A2.
A2 makes it conforming as a use. Okay, if you don't do the A2, it's a non-conforming, and the lot has changed sizes, so it's now an illegal use. And that's where the insurance companies will get a fix.
So if we approve their B, we're almost putting them at a hardship on their home.
If it has a catastrophe right now, past 50%, they can't build it either.
Well, no, they can't
They
today because they're a non-conforming, but they're legal.
Legal.
They're
When
legal
they
as a-
change the lot sizes, they'll be illegal.
Right, so that's when you can't change. But I'm saying they probably have insurance right now.
I'm sure they have insurance right now.
So if we change it, the insurance company's gonna come in and say, we're not gonna insure you.
If they figure it out, yeah, they're gonna drop them.
So wouldn't the easiest way to do this in the meeting would be to amend it to
You
an
can either
A2?
approve it all or not approve it all, but
Yes.
I do think that I doubt whether they realize that they're gonna have a problem with their insurance.
Do we know if they have a mortgage on it now?
It's,
Huh?
it seemed like it was an old family property.
Because if you had a mortgage, you'd have to have insurance.
Well, I understand, everybody wants insurance. It's a question of can you buy it? Is it available to them?
Right.
So the recommendation for denial is very technical, based on the future land use plan and the A2. Had they asked for an R zoning, they might have recommended approval of that. So it's just a technical zoning question there.
Where's that one located in?
Adam, did he have that?
You know what, I've got a whole other issue going on here. I can't find the whole drive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's what I couldn't
please.
find.
I don't have
I'm having a hard time.
I don't
Yeah.
see it.
Finding which one?
Review all the
Planning,
information.
I got Planning Issues Commission, Resources, ZBA.
Yeah, well, we've just been hacked and we no longer have computers.
Don't even say
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Siri's gonna believe you.
Well, this is weird, because I didn't read about the
Siri grabs it.
description yesterday, I pulled it up today, half of it's gone, and I know I was like,
Thank you.
half of it's gone.
Yeah.
I had done all this work.
It's there somewhere.
It's in space.
This almost inclines me to
No, it's
approve
the
the whole
same
deal.
file, so it's almost like the beginning of the file, that I had added all this stuff. and then-
17010 Harmony Road.
Okay, that's by me.
17010?
Harmony Road, okay. Got a cross street, what's the nearest cross street?
On the same side of the road as me somewhere.
It is Grant Highway.
Grand
Well,
County,
so it's by-
20.
So that's part of the problem, yeah, it's a big, busy intersection,
Oh, I know,
and we
yeah, I know
have
where it's at.
rezoned some other properties right in that immediate area for B3 in the last couple of years. So they felt that the ag zoning just wasn't appropriate,
Yeah, but what are we talking, a couple acres?
less than an acre.
Right,
Because they're
it's just
also
a house.
asking for a variation.
I mean, you're not changing the neighborhood.
What you're locking that up for.
When they sell it, eventually it's all gonna go B3 anyway.
Right. I'd say approve them all.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
So there wouldn't be probably any issue when they went to sell it to change it to B3 because they're gonna be surrounded by B3
Yeah.
at that time.
If they were asking for B3 for the whole thing, there would be no question the zoning board would have recommended approval.
Okay.
And if they did that, could they keep the house there?
Yep.
So,
The same, but it would be the same situation. It would be an illegal, non-conforming
Oh, so-
situation, so
okay,
it
you're
would
back to where
burn,
you're
blah, blah,
talking
blah.
about.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get Norm to give us a little advice on what the best route would be to take on this, so we don't put the applicant in a bad position with insurance, yet we do what's right for the area and the county. That'd be,
I'm fine with me. I'd like to hear the
Yeah.
answer from them.
okay.
And we'll figure out how to craft the ordinance.
Okay,
And that's it.
that's it. The other two are,
There were 3 solar farms, one very simple A1 to A2.
Yeah.
So you'll have just the 2 that'll have a super majority requirement.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
You have
I do have one thing I need to say. I will be not voting on Curry Enterprises. It's 10 Caleb's property. I represent that.
Parts of trucks.
Which one?
One of the speakers was objected to.
Which one is that?
Oh, Prairie,
First one.
you said Prague.
Yeah.
You're, I'm not hearing
In
you.
the lobby, it's just a phone number.
Say it again?
There's somebody waiting in the lobby, it's just a phone
I'm
number.
gonna guess that's Corryn.
Waiting in the lobby.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't let them in the meeting yet.
She's 9:10, so we.
Okay. Well, if it's Corryn, is it,
I would guess that would be her, yes.
okay.
Okay.
So
Let's bring her in.
she's not in our lobby. She's in Atlanta.
Right, she's.
No, she's in our lobby on the screen.
She's in the Teams lobby.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Big techie, will you? Come on.
I can't see the screen behind me, so I don't know what you're. She's in the lobby where, Joe?
She's about, she's on now.
In cyberspace. She's on the World Wide Web.
Gotcha. Find out. Okay, let's bring Corryn on board. Is she there and available? Corryn, are you there and available?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Thank you. If you'd like to introduce.
I'm calling in from the airplane, so I apologize if we get cut off.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your efforts on this to be here and through the telephone. So if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit why you'd like this position on the Conservation District, please.
Sure, yes. So, hello. I would love to be a part of the MCCD. I'm used to, I'm a board member for the chapter of the Forest Preservation, and I would love to do more closer to home. And I really focus on sustainability, professional and responsibility. So I think I would bring, value to your board with those credentials.
Okay. Anything else, or I'll ask the committee members if they have any questions?
What's her name? This is.
Okay. Okay, you guys got it? We're jumping around a little bit with our interviews from our schedule, so some of the people on the committee here are bringing up your application right now, so that's what's taking a minute.
That's okay.
Okay, sure.
If I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Corryn, this is Joe Gottemoller. You mentioned on the boards in Lake County, in the Forest Preserve, what do you think can carry over from the Forest Preserve that would help the Conservation District?
Yeah, sure. So the position is similar. The mission is similar, and I was on the development committee, so I bring that experience. One moment for the interpreter. Our connection is a little frozen. Okay, and I understand, how the Forest Preserve runs and operates. Does that help?
No, thank you.
Hopefully it came through.
Okay, it did, thank you. This is Larry Smith. Corryn, what do I tell my neighbor who is a farmer who says the Conservation District is out of line by the number of acres that they manage and own? How would I explain the importance of the open land? What the farmer should do or not do?
Sure. So farms are important as well as conservation. And so it's important to understand both uses of the land and better, used as open land and preserved rather than getting sold for development, and the same with farms as well. If conservation and farmers can partner together with their similar interests for preserving the land, then that's of greater benefit.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else have any other questions for Corryn? Jim or John? Or Carolyn, you had something?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Jim. Jim Kearns.
Corryn, I compliment you being able to pull this off while you're on an airplane, by the way. And reading through, you interned for the Environmental Defenders, and is that right? Did I read that right?
I volunteered with them, yes, and I continue to do that sometimes.
Okay, and then you worked with them. It was. Tell me a little bit about your work there with the stormwater management. That you worked with the municipal.
Yeah, sure. That was quite a long time ago. So I did intern while I was in college, and I was learning about how different municipalities control the stormwater runoff. And so I was involved with research on more eco-friendly ways rather than just concrete, barriers. It was a very interesting project. It was a research project that I was involved in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Carolyn? Carolyn Campbell?
Hi, Corryn, it's Carolyn Campbell. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on some of the things that you listed as challenges in your application. A couple of them, I'm wondering how they pertain to the district. Looking at the first one, loss of farmland due to development pressures. in terms of, like, how do you know, you're seeing that obviously as a challenge. I think a lot of us do see that as a challenge of the loss of agricultural land here in the county as being an issue. Could you explain that a little bit further, please?
Yes. So it's hard to compete, with the real estate development. Right now, the housing market is so tight. And so how do we balance the need for homes? You know, there are many people out there right now that are feeling stuck. So how do we balance that with our farming needs and making sure that our farmers are valued and also still respected as well as business members of the community? So that's a challenge.
Okay, anyone else have anything for Corryn? You got more, Carolyn? Or?
I think it came up in another interview about the time commitment, that this does require a couple meetings, a minimum a month, and then there's other activities that trustees get involved in throughout the course of the year. And wondering how that works to fit into your schedule.
Sure. I finish work at 5 and I work from home 3 days a week. So I'm already used to, you know, meeting several times, you know, with my current board service. So that's not typically an issue.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, Corryn, thank you very much for calling in and your extraordinary efforts to make the meeting. We have 7 very qualified applicants for 2 positions. So after we do a few more interviews here this morning, we'll be doing the deliberations, and someone will let you know. So thank you very much.
Sure, yes. Thank you so much as well for the opportunity. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Bye now.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Michael's here.
Mr. Szurek? Okay, lost my order completely all mixed up here.
The order's we're definitely out of whack on the order, but that's okay. We'll
Mr. Szurek?
Yes.
Would you have a seat right there, please?
Here?
Yeah, that's fine, that's okay. And tell us, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit why you would want to be on the Conservation Board.
I'm Mike Szurek. I'm a dentist here in Woodstock. I grew up in Woodstock. Been back working, practicing for 23 years now. I've been involved with a lot of things in Northwoods, Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula of Michigan, as far as conservation projects. One is Northwoods Alliance. The other one is called Partners in Forestry. They are about the working to preserve conservation efforts in the Northwoods and non-defragmentation of the forest lands up there. And then I'm also on the board for Friends of Moraine Hills State Park.
Moraine State Park?
Moraine Hills State Park.
Moraine Hills, I'm sorry. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Szurek? Well, I'll start with mine. And that's the one I've been doing this morning here is, what do I tell my neighbor who is a farmer that complains the Conservation District has way too much land and how they use it as in they're competing for rents, etc. with the farmers. And just a general purpose that they feel the Conservation District has overstepped its bounds with the amount of land they have.
I get this from several patients that are farmers. Every day I get to hear about it with the conservation. They definitely have some conflicts with them. I mean, I know in general, I mean, one of the things that I see with the conservation, I mean, I know we are McHenry County, but the western and the eastern parts of the county are very different populations, different usages of the land. But as far as talking to the farmers, it's basically working out the strategy and trying to explain the benefits of what they're doing, but also listening and understanding what the farmers need. So as much as sometimes the conservation district may not have the best or the agreement to the farmers, it sometimes needs to be looked and approached upon that they to come some kind of agreement. I mean, I know one of the biggest things is drainage ditches. Is the one that I've heard the most about, and I understand that they normally don't, or sometimes don't come in agreement. So I mean, basically, it comes between the conservation district and the farm property owners to figure out what the best utilization is, and it sometimes isn't an agreement. Not always an easy answer, but I guess it's the conservation district working with the farmers to find out what their needs are and trying to come to an agreement what is acceptable or how to work what the agenda, what the conservation district would need to do.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
To expand on that, I'm going to ask a question. I didn't think about this until you mentioned it. One of the problems that some of the farmers are having right now with the conservation district and the drainage districts is the beavers have been damming up and then flooding properties back behind the conservation district. Some of the farmers would like the conservation district to remove the dams and remove those beaver, since that's causing the flooding of the properties. So how would you handle that situation? What was your, I mean, how do you come up with a solution for that?
Well, I mean, you've got two sides. You've got the damage that the beaver could do to potential of croplands or other lands, whether new or old, and then you have the people that are more for the protection of the wildlife. And so, I mean, I know this happened in McHenry County back, I think it was the 90s. Dewfield Pond is one of those spots. In fact, my neighbor, who I live to right now, was the owner of that property when they had this exact issue. And it was a major, I wasn't living back in Woodstock at that time, but it was a major lawsuit or issue because it flooded local property owners, not farmland, but just local property owners. And then I knew it was it became a property of the conservation district. But how to deal with that? I mean, if it's truly affecting established cropland or conservation easement land, I don't know how you define it. If it is a new development, I mean, you can go through the pre-existing. What is pre-existing? How many years you go back and what pre-existing is? But if it affects, the common thing is, what's the best way to remove or alleviate the beaver issue? Yes, for our area, for our development. I mean, we're not living in northern Canada where beavers don't have an issue. This is usually cropland and affects. Something it has to do to abate the beaver damage to the croplands.
Yeah, I think that's been an issue for a long time. What's more important, the wetland or the farmland, right? And not so much only the beaver, but what they're doing to the land. And, you know, the farmer wants to protect it, but I don't think that's going to change very much in the near future. I mean, there are board members on there that got on there just for that purpose. And that's a tough one.
Okay. Anyone else? Carolyn?
Well, I've been asking what you think. You have a list of challenges, and I think we've kind of hit on the one that's a huge, and it has been a challenge for a long time. So I don't want to belabor that because you've actually been answering that question, and you do talk about the shared interest of farmers. But you say you're working on land acquisition and respecting the shared interests of farmers, hunters, and hikers, et cetera. So what in that statement, in addition to the known issues that we know about with farmers, what are you also getting at here, or that you see as challenges facing the conservation district?
Well, protecting what really nice property we still have in this county where, I mean, I know there's other Chicagoland or areas that have it, but it's been a pretty nice, I feel the acquisition of the properties that the conservation has gotten is a nice little addition to preserving, even though nothing's 100% natural left, there's some areas. And a lot of farmers would disagree that it could be better utilized, but I mean, I feel for the public, since this is a public funding and public interest, as much as the agriculture is an important part, we have a lot of urban centers here in McHenry County, and the recreation can have just as much as an financial impact as the farming. This is the same thing that I've been dealing with in northern Wisconsin. It's these public lands where they've shown that instead of logging, which is essentially like a cropland, and getting that purchase, the impact of the urban visitation of these areas becomes more financially reasonable than the actual harvesting of lumber. So I'm just trying to use a good example there.
Yeah.
Good answer too. And I like on your app where you want to maintain the woods instead of bifurcating or chopping them all up, and which is their pretty much their drive to maintain those woods as much as they can with the connectivity.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good? Joe? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Szurek, for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
We have 7 very qualified applicants in 2 positions. So we're gonna, later this morning, we're gonna be figuring this out, whittling it down to the 2, and somebody will let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks.
She is, but Nora's next in line, so I think Nora's sitting next to her.
So Rachel Thomas has communicated to me via email that she had a personal issue come up, and she apologizes for the lack of communication. I did tell her that we are still interviewing. If she wanted to join virtually, she has not responded yet.
Okay, let me know if that happens. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you this morning?
Good, very good.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell us why you'd like to be on the Conservation District Board?
For sure. My name is Nora Zeller. I'm a corporate international attorney for an international company. My practice is predominantly M&A, corporate finance, cash equity, tax equity, bond financing. All of our projects there's nothing under $1 billion. We are a very large-scale international wind and solar utility-scale development company. So we do onshore, offshore wind, solar development, and battery storage. My job is predominantly with the commercial contracts and setting up the various structures. I'm also involved with cross-border transactions, predominantly in Canada, and working with the Canadian government and the Indigenous First Nations. The reason I'm very interested in this position is because in my role, environmental impact and these kinds of issues on protecting the wildlife, protecting land is very dominant, and also it's very concerning to me too. I live also in a location that's heavily wooded. We get a lot of wildlife. And I always enjoy, making sure that, we are protecting the species, protecting the land, protecting the open spaces. Our company is very conscious in how we develop these things. A lot of our projects end up on federal land, so I'm negotiating with the BLM, which is the Bureau of Land Management with the U.S. Department of Interior. I also work a lot with state parks. Right now, I've got a big deal going on with the Ohio State Parks, in which we are making sure that our projects have proper buffer zones with conservation easement and conservation protections. And that is one thing that I'm, again, been really conscious about. And with all my knowledge and experience and what I'm doing with the state parks, the BLM, the indigenous lands, including the Osage Plain Indians, I'm working with the Mohawks and the Musqueams up in Canada. They're protecting their land. It really has kind of sparked an interest in me to want to really do more closer to home. And the nice thing about my background is I'm able to understand, very complex documents. I'm, always negotiating and analyzing them. I have a very collaborative spirit. I work together as a team. I have my team that we work with. And of course, I work with the executive team, our outside counsels and lenders, and even our high investors. So that's kind of what really sparked my interest, is wanting to be able to bring my knowledge and skill set and really do wonderful things for the conservation district, in order to, get some, conservation easements in place. I do a lot with land campaign, so I'm fully familiar with the different real estate types of holdings, whether it's a deeded or a ground lease or, easement rights. I do a lot with oil and gas companies. I'm constantly working with all the big utility companies. I also work with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for transmission. So I just wanted to, kind of bring that whole knowledge and skill set around all of our, feasibility, especially for environmental, to this role.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions? Well, the question I've been asking this morning is, what do I tell my neighbor who is a farmer when he tells me that the Conservation District has way too much land already?
Well, you could tell the farmer a couple things, and I've worked right now with a lot of farmers, especially with our wind projects. There's an opportunity to protect the land for future legacy. And to the extent of what his farming activity is, whether it's livestock or agriculture, there's a way that you could possibly work with, we don't want to take away his business or his livelihood. But in the future, could he set aside land? Could he do a future grant for whether conservation or something to protect the land? Or could we do something collectively with him where, maybe we do allow him, some grazing rights. I know out west that I do a lot in Wyoming, and I see it with the BLM land where they do allow the livestock to graze on BLM land in certain locations. Sometimes, I see, working with those kinds of issues. So it's really kind of a balance. Clearly we don't want to take away from the landowner. I noticed in the Illinois Conservation Act that this district has the power of eminent domain, which is very interesting. But I know Illinois does not follow the Kehoe decision. There's got to be a stronger purpose, so I don't really see maybe the conservation district or any district really invoking that right unless they've got a really compelling reason, because otherwise you're going to end up in litigation. So I find ways right now that I'm working with current landowners as we site projects, as we work on different projects where we are allowing them to continue their agriculture. Also in solar, the new thing is agrivoltaic. So we are raising the panel so you can graze the sheep underneath the panel. You can maybe grow a few crops under there. We have somebody that's actually growing grapes down in Georgia under our agrivoltaic project. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to try to, strike that balance, but yet, preserve the land for future. And I do have a landowner that I am currently working with because he was very concerned when he passes away, his kids don't want the farm. And he's looking at ways to mitigate capital gain, and he's looking at ways to do charitable donation. And the one thing he was really focused on was, doing a lot of conservation easements for, different parts of his land because there is some historic value. It's located, in an area that I guess actually had some or Civil War battle. And of course, we are nowhere near battle sites, but he just wants to preserve it. And, we're working with him where we're kind of subordinating our future lease rights to what he wants to do, because I'm not going to need that land too much, because what we do is once the project's fully sited, we can release land if we're not going to use it, and then So I'm working with this landowner on that aspect as well.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Carolyn, if you.
Yeah, I've been asking what you see as, I mean, you have a lot of experience in terms of development rights and land ownership and that sort of thing. What do you see, you've listed some challenges down here on your application about some of the challenges facing the conservation district. What do you see as one of the primary challenges or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really, what is the budget? What are the budget constraints that the conservation district needs to, be operating in? I read in the Illinois Act that if they go over budget, they can issue tax warrants, and then the question becomes, have they done that? What is the current status of that? I'm very interested to know, what the current status of their tax bond and revenue bond structures are, because, there's some way to monetize different ways to, get the funds you need through those types of programs. If the, situation is correct, and that you're able to use those funds to, grow the district, whether it's infrastructure improvements or acquiring additional land, or getting future land rights, whether in the terms of a conservation easement or some sort of option agreement, if we want to go that route. So to me, it's kind of really understanding, what's the budget constraints that the district's working in, and what capacity does the district really need to focus on, maybe exploring new opportunities for funds that at the same time we're not, impacting taxpayers too bad, but yet we're getting what we need in terms of whether it's a bond program or a different type of program that is available to the district, whether it's through the state or the federal government or even Illinois DNR if possible. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Jim, go ahead.
So you mentioned your experience around the country and all these different programs. Just as an attorney, you do a lot of solar farm and wind farm projects on conservation properties and government properties?
The only one we really do it on is BLM, and it's only in the energy corridor. So under the 2005 Federal Energy Act, there are certain parts of the federal land that is dedicated for energy. This would be transmission, and predominantly that's what we have on these federal lands is transmission. I also have an underground collection line going through this park, but a very small corner of the park in Ohio. That's my Ohio project, and I'm working with them and the Ohio Power Siting Board. There, because the park was very concerned about, the underground line, even though it's buried, you can't even see it. It's even 10 feet under the ground, and it's literally crossing not even 40 feet of a corner of the park. And the park is, I want to say 300 acres. It's a pretty big park.
Okay, so what is your thoughts on McHenry County Conservation District utilizing solar wind for revenue?
No, well, I mean, I don't know if I don't think the district itself would have it, but there's ways if you have a landowner that's next to the district that may be considering putting that in, there's certain, ways we could, try to talk to that landowner to protect the district, getting those buffer zones that I'm working with that other park on. I mean, my goal is not to, reinvent anything here, nor am I looking to, have the park developed in any way, because I'm kind of like, yeah, it's kind of probably strange to you. Why is an energy attorney here talking to us about conservation when we're pushing all this other stuff? But at the end of the day, I think the knowledge and skill set that I've developed, and knowing how these guys work, how the developers work, how the players work, all the regulations that go involved in what that project needs, because that project is permitted on so many different fronts. It's permitted at the county level, it's permitted at the state level. And once you push the power on the grid, now you need FERC approval, which is the federal. So it really, you've got all these nuances, and really it comes down to, how you can protect the land that's near a potential development, or how we can create that buffer zone, or what we can do, as a district to work with the landowner, not get into any litigation or be, a terrible good neighbor, but at the same time, do something where we are protecting the park. Now, there is some things, we were talking with the Ohio Park about solar bird feeders. They were all for that. So we kind of indicated when I did that deal, and I'm still working on it, we did the big conservation buffer zones that we had all these landowners agree that they would, there's this buffer zone between us and the park, and it's a pretty big buffer zone. We also look at migratory bird patterns. We also look at animal wildlife patterns. Another thing with permitting is we have to do all the EPA studies. We have to get fish and wildlife clearance. We have to make sure that, we're not going into a place where you've got migration that could be impacted or curtailed in any way. So we're looking, we do work with all that in part of the projects. And there are so many ways that a current landowner, if they are going to want development on their land, what we can do to balance the interest, but yet mitigate and preserve what we need for environmental. And that's really what I want to do. I want to bring that knowledge and skill set because I feel like there's an opportunity where I can, get involved and, help with some of these issues that you may be encountering, especially if you need, in person, you don't want to have too much outside legal spend. Look at documents, look at ordinances, look at some of your bond financing agreements. I mean, granted, I'm not the attorney for the district, but, kind of, bring that knowledge and skill set and then work with whatever outside counsel you have representing the district.
Anyone else? It seems like your job, I'm sorry, John, did you have something?
Just one, and I think what Jim meant about the solar on some of the land is the lease prices that they get. The conservation district leases some lands to farmers.
Oh, good.
And obviously the solar pays a lot more. Is there restoration after solar farms?
Yes.
Because their life is what, 30 years, 20 years?
30 to 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, in order to do it, we have to do a decommissioning bond. Mm-hmm. And there's a decommissioning permit that has to get put in place, especially when you go what we call COD.
But in Illinois, we can't do that, right?
No, we do.
We can't enforce it as a board.
Yeah, okay, but on a private lease
do
with a
it.
conservation district, you could do a decommission.
Yes,
Yeah.
and actually a lot of the landowners are wanting to see copies and know that they have full decommissioning. Now, the one big thing I feel like is facing landowners, and I know it's one of the lessons learned, is topsoil removal. So when we go in and we do a project, we have to clear the topsoil. But we've been working with the landowner to say, we don't want to take this topsoil. This is valuable dirt to you. And if we take it, because we've had issues where a couple landowners have complained, geez, I got to use that topsoil over here, and then he had to go out and buy new dirt, and it just cost him a lot more money. So I think the one thing too is, kind of working through some of the nuances to kind of balance that interest with the landowner to say, okay, yes, we'll do the lease for the solar development. I don't know how much revenue is coming back to the district, but there's ways to negotiate from the landowner perspective because I've seen it from both sides of the house. So I just want to, like I said, I can bring that knowledge and skill set to kind of give you better, like if you have a situation, you're like, well, what do you think is the best approach we should take? And then I could make my recommendation and kind of point to what's in the various documents about that. But yes, leasing it for solar is fine. Solar isn't too much of an impact. Well, one thing we're doing is with the bee pollinators because we want to keep those. We're doing a lot of plant development. We're doing a lot of what's called vegetation management around the solar farm, making sure that we put those prairie type plants back in, whether it's a prairie grass or some sort of pollinating flower or a milkweed for the butterflies. Because the one thing that's very concerning is making sure that we don't disrupt the pollination group as well. A lot of the panels are bifacial, so they will move with the sun. So if there's a migration pattern going through, there's an opportunity where we can either move the panel over, or once it hits power production, because these things, there's no storage on these properties. All the power has to come up. There's a project substation, and then it feeds into the transmission line, which will go into your main grid, which is like your ComEd or your Duke Energy or Pacific Core, one of the big guys. Or it can go onto the RTO grid, which is in Illinois, it's MISO and PJM. So, and then they sell the power to whoever. So the nice thing we can do is once we are under what's called power production contracts, so we are obligated to produce so much power per day because everything is based on the day-ahead energy markets. So once we hit power capacity on a project, the project has to basically kind of shut down for the day once it hits power capacity. So that's why sometimes if you drive past and you see a couple windmills spinning and your others aren't, even though the wind's blowing, that means that grid has hit its power capacity for the day and that they had to shut that down because we can't push any more power on the grid. Because in order to push power on the grid, you have to have permission from the RTO, which is your MISO PJM, and FERC. So it really comes down to, just trying to balance it all. And like I said, coming in with this knowledge and skill set, I could definitely feel like I can offer a lot to help the district with any potential issue and see what we can do.
Okay, anyone else? Have you attended a conservation district board meeting or?
Not a board meeting, but I enjoy the parks. I've gone to quite a few of them and they're beautiful and I would just love to see them keep growing.
It seems like your job would take you out of town.
No, not really. I just got back from Washington, D.C. I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the Department of Energy, but that's an annual meeting. And I just had a trip up to Canada in September, but no, I'm predominantly here.
So you'd be here to be able to attend the meetings?
I will be able to attend the meetings in person. Yes, I wouldn't have considered this position if I could not, and definitely am local and able to definitely attend.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming in. We have 7 applicants this morning for 2 positions and 7 very qualified applicants.
Okay, very good.
Okay,
well,
thank
you.
you.
All have a great day. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Kathy, anything from Rachel Thomas?
She did not respond to my last email.
Pardon? Bonnie Leahy, you can come right in. Hey, come on in, please have a chair, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit why you'd like this position on the Conservation Board, please.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. I would like to give a little background. Maybe that explains why I'm interested in being on the board again.
Yep.
But starting with the early background, I'm originally from Nebraska and have a farming background. I came to Illinois for my BA in economics. And after having one child, I became very interested in education and became a school board member of the Marengo Union Consolidated School District for 12 years. But at that same time, the Conservation District appointed me to their Site and Development Committee. And this was a committee that went to unopened sites and determined the development potential of those sites. In 2003, I was appointed by the McHenry County Board I was appointed by the County Board to be on the Conservation District Board. I was asked at that time to try to help improve the relationships with the farming community of Western McHenry County. In 1 year after being on the board, I became the unofficial steward for Coral Woods. And this on-ground experience really helped provide me with insights that were valuable in terms of the difficulty with restoration and also in terms of working with the general public of the county. But most importantly, during this time, the board at that time made very difficult and important decisions to initiate the transition of the leadership. And at that time, we went through the transition of a change of leadership for the Conservation District. And in the next few years, the Conservation Board will probably face many retirements with the executive leadership team. And I believe it would be valuable to have at least have one member who experienced that transition of leadership years ago to be on the present board. In 2009, I was reappointed to the Conservation District Board. And now I was the official site steward also of Coral Woods. And this made me a better board member to be involved in conservation with the on-ground experience. It also allowed me to work with the general public as they volunteered on with the Conservation District, including working with corporate volunteers, with teachers, students, parents, and children. And I believe I became a better board member for this experience. I personally am very concerned about the financial health of the district, but that is so interrelated with the viability of your small businesses, your farming community, and the public you serve. And I always see I always look through the lens of how we serve the public, how we support the business community, and how we support conservation. And those are the few words I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the?
Full disclosure, I was on the Conservation Board years in 2003 when they appointed Bonnie. So I've known Bonnie since 2003.
Okay, I suspected that. No.
So
Go ahead, Jim.
you talked about the relations, the farmer relations. How do you feel your success was?
It was hard work because there were quite a few missteps by the district at that time with the farming community.
Meaning?
Meaning, as soon as the farmers sold some land to the district, no trespassing sign was put up on that land. And that was hard for the farmer to accept. The shot that was heard around the world, or around McHenry County, is when a farmer in the Marengo area had land along the Conservation District property along the railroad right-of-way. And he stepped onto, he had his land here, he stepped onto the conservation area and he was given a warning ticket for trespassing.
Okay, that would be a challenge.
So it was difficult, but I knew a lot of the farmers, so it was helpful in that sense.
And you still live in the Marengo area?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah, and I was also asking sort of on the same question as like, what do I tell my neighbor who's a farmer who says the conservation district has way too much property and they don't know how to manage it?
Some of the farmers have chosen to sell more of their property to the district for various reasons. So sometimes it's the initiative of the farmer who wants to not just sell a valuable natural area, but also the rest of the land that goes with it. So it works both ways. There was a time early on in, well, I think it was before I was on the board, that I believe there was a time when some farmland was purchased that should not have been purchased. But what do you tell the farmer? I guess you have to educate the farmer to a certain point and still understand his thoughts, but conservation really does contribute to the whole community, and I think that's where we have to stand.
Okay. Carolyn, did you have something?
No, well, a couple of things. I mean, in terms of your board experience, because you've had a lot of board experience.
Yes, I have.
As like a local official, not just like not just a elected official for the school district.
Yes.
And so can you speak to that a little bit? Because there's two. You had the school district, and I believe at that time, you were going in the process of consolidating 3 school systems.
Yes.
So being more efficient in terms of tax dollars.
Right. So this was another experience with transition of leadership because you had 3 separate school districts, and they were, for financial reasons, they were going to consolidate from 3 school districts into 1 school district, which also meant 4 school buildings into maybe 3 school buildings, which also meant that you had teachers that may not teach kindergarten anymore, but teach 7th grade. There was a movement of the teaching staff. And fortunately, we had pretty decent board at that time because it was 3 boards. There were 3 boards, and then the community elected only 7 members for the 1 board for the consolidated district. So a lot of difficult decisions, a lot of community interaction, but it ended up being a very successful transition of leadership, and everything worked out well, but it was challenging.
But I guess I would say the same was true with the district.
Yes,
that was difficult too. It
too.
wasn't just a transition of leadership, but there was a serious problem at that time.
Yes, there was. Yes, there definitely was. And so most of the communities were not in favor of the district. There had been a lot of relations severed at that time. Again, the farmers were not happy with the district, and some of them had good reason not to be happy with the district. Communication was poor. So this was what I called a sort of a golden board at that time. We had Joe, and we had a few other individuals who were very excellent. And so it was difficult, but it worked out. And now communities have better relationships with the district. Farmers, I hope, have better relationships with the district. And I think the community has really benefited by the transition of leadership from that time.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had been asking, but I think you've already covered this, just like you talked about the challenges, it's providing the services and the cost of providing those services, and then just building relationships with the business and farming community. Did you want to add to that? I think you'd already covered that in some of your comments, but I've been asking that question of everybody, so I wanted to make sure I did.
So how do I,
well, in terms of
costs
yeah, in terms of listing of challenges that are currently facing the district, I've been asking everybody what they felt those challenges are that are facing the district. You've talked about the cost of providing services and the relationship between business and farmers, but you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, there's one thing that I'm very concerned about, and this is the state climate disclosure legislation that's based off the California climate disclosure legislation. And this legislation reaches down, they mention that the legislation mentions that it starts with the $1 billion revenue each year of revenue each owner business that will be affected. But then the legislation reaches down to the supplier to that business, which could affect the farming community, could affect the small business community. And these climate disclosure laws are going to be put in place fairly rapidly, and I do not believe the small business community has the financial, is not prepared for the financial cost of these changes. Also, the pressure on this, and because the financial health of the conservation district is interrelated with the financial strength of the small business community and the public you serve, you have to think about the impacts in general. What may happen to businesses in the farming community in McHenry County. For example, banks, there's a statement from the banks in California in my packet here, what they're facing, that when giving a loan to a farmer, to a small business, to other entities, will have to be asking for the farmers or the small businesses' carbon footprint. And because the business now has to reveal what their carbon footprint is, including those they give loans to. So is our business community right now prepared to provide climate disclosure, their carbon footprint, and disclose how they impact the farmers, or impact the climate, I guess. I don't think so, and I think the transition's too fast. And I'm just, that's something I think would be good to have a board member who understands some of these dynamics. And if there's any way the district can do anything that would contribute to the dialogue in a positive way, I think that would be great.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, well, thank you very much for your time. We have 7 very qualified applicants and 2 positions open.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, anything from Rachel? Nothing? Okay. Well, unfortunately, one applicant, Rachel Thomas, had some personal issues to deal with this morning, so they're not going to be able to come in or call in. So we can go right to deliberation, or it's 10 o'clock. Do we want a 5-minute break? 5-minute break? Is that okay with you guys?
Sure.
Pardon?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll Okay.
Are we gonna do the rankings?
We're back
Oh, he's
on.
got it up
Ready?
there.
Go.
Oh, the whiteboard. All right, Scott.
So,
Johnny on the spot.
The meeting is back in session.
Get the whiteboard, this is a banner day.
Yes, it is.
Scott's gonna help us out with the whiteboard.
Spongy moss.
So, typically, we've had a open discussion on this before anybody makes a motion.
And who are we replacing again?
Linda Thomas and Pat Fritz.
That's what I thought, okay.
So Crystal
So
Lake and
Linda's
Harvard.
from Woodstock area, Bull Valley.
She's Bull Valley and Pat is, what, Hebron?
Harvard.
Or Harvard?
Yeah.
Harvard, okay, right, Harvard, sorry.
So, well, obviously, I mean, you could tell by the interviews too, Mike Szurek is my favorite because he's an knowledgeable land conservation guy. And he's got the pulse on McHenry County. He's definitely a McHenry County boy, right and true.
Speak at will. Anybody has a suggestion that they like?
I'll just go. McCure 1. Michael Zertek 2. And Miss Leahy 3.
Yeah, I liked, Bonnie was the last one. I just want to, because I got a little confused there. That was the last one.
Yes, Bonnie
Bonnie
Leahy
Leahy was the last person who spoke, and that's my pick.
Yeah, I really liked Bonnie too.
What I liked that Bonnie said that nobody else picked up, or that, I mean, I don't mean our book, but nobody else mentioned.
She liked you?
She's, her pulse is exactly correct. The district is about to go through changes because they're gonna have staff changes. Ed Collins has been there 35 years. Kessler's now been there since 2003, so that's 20 years. I mean, there's other members there that are gonna change. John Kramer's been there as long as Ed's been there. So that's really, this board's next job is gonna be that transition, whether they want it to be or not.
And they actually are losing a leadership position now. Bonnie was mine as well.
I thought Nora was very interesting. I don't know, I mean, she's got a huge development background. It's probably more sophisticated than the Conservation District needs, but I thought she was very interesting. That would be number 2 for me.
And that's my number 2 also.
Oh, no, Scott. It's almost a breakdown.
He came in unprepared. He didn't get the,
Oh, I'm sure he's got a backup staff somewhere.
Okay. Jim, did you want to get in?
Also Bonnie, and partly because of the location where she lives in the county, and with Fritz coming off, and also with the agriculture support that she brings. So she was probably my number 1 or number 2. My number 2 was also Michael, if we're only going to give 2, was Michael Szurek. And I did like what he brought to it.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Well, I personally thought Nora did bring a lot to the table, and I liked that she was interested in looking at alternative ways to raise revenue for the district without affecting the taxpayers. That was one thing that I liked that she said. I believe it was Mr. McCue, he was the first one. He was the deer hunter who has a different background that is not quite as technical as some of these other ones that I thought could be a good, just bring a different point of view to the table.
I would say I also like the fact that he's using the district in a way that's different than most people are using it. I mean, he is doing the deer hunter program, he's doing the hunting programs, but an awful lot of people don't realize,
I agree
you
with
know,
you on that.
that goes in.
Name up there?
Jim, you want?
Yeah, but I've already got two.
No, you can have 3.
Well, he was my
Everybody
third.
can have three.
Gerald McCue was my third.
He would be my third too. We're gonna have 3.
Well, and so we're doing 3. Did everybody
So
get
you
3?
got another
Sure,
one.
if you want.
Did you get 3?
Well, we're not letting you have 3, but the rest of it's.
You only get two. Well, let's give her 1. Then we know where she's definitely at.
Did you get your 3rd? Okay. Well, so McCue and what's the other Sever? I can't read that.
Szurek.
Szurek, sorry. It's right here, Szurek. I think that more came out in the interview. They didn't really provide a lot on their applications. It was very, very sparse in terms of what they thought the problems were, what they wanted to do about it, that kind of thing. I felt a lot more effort and just kind of enthusiasm we got from Nora and Bonnie. For sure. I mean, if we're looking at, where people live, we also have to keep in mind that as Linda rolls off, there are no women on that board. And historically, there's been 1, maybe 2 at a time. And all things being equal, if they're coming to the table and they're highly skilled and they're bringing something, I mean, Nora is skilled, and she's bringing in a different perspective in terms of land use and potential opportunities for revenue growth there that does not involve taxes. So I like the fact that they brought a lot, Bonnie and Nora especially brought a lot to the table in terms of what they'd like to do. If I needed to do a 3rd, maybe
Well, you don't have to.
Michael or Kate, but Michael probably, because I know that was interesting, the work that he did up in the
Yeah,
Upper
and
Peninsula.
recognizing the quality of the woods to preserve in McHenry County was, realizing what, if you are gonna buy land, don't waste it on farmland, put it into the restoration or continuation of the woods.
And maybe my 3rd would be Corryn. I thought she did her answer to the farmer situation was it was important to understand both uses and balance the development with still respecting the farmers. So, any further discussion, or I thought Bonnie did a fine job too. My name's not there, but certainly all applicants are acceptable to this. They did a great job.
Absolutely.
So, with her past experience and the change of leadership, that would not be a problem. I just, what do you think, Jim?
Make a motion for Bonnie. We can get one.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for one position to be for Bonnie Leahy and seconded by Carolyn. Motion by Joe, seconded by Carolyn. Is there any further discussion regarding that?
She's solid.
I can live with that.
Call the vote.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the opinions that have been presented on the floor here, so if that, will go to vote. Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
I'd like to nominate Mike Szurek.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to nominate Mike Szurek for the 2nd position.
I'll second that.
By John and seconded by Jim. Is there any further discussion regarding that? No other discussion?
Mike's from Woodstock, so he's kind of in the center of the county. So close enough to where Linda's all coming off.
Sure.
He did bring a lot of strength. He did a lot of strength in his opinions. I thought he had a real good answers to his 10 questions that were out there. And yet brought a lot of presentation himself. He didn't just sit there.
Right, into the room.
Yes, and so I liked him.
I think it'll be interesting to see what he brings from northern Michigan and Wisconsin and how it can apply here.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussions? We'll go to vote. John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes for that too. So, staff will take care of notifying all the applicants, I presume. And those two will be
I'd
remembered.
love to see if we could use Nora or call on her sometime for some other uses too. I mean, what a mindset.
Should be interesting in our solar farm discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to have that background information.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't want to ask about the state law with her to see what she.
I was waiting.
I know you were waiting for me to ask that.
The interesting thing was too, that of the work done on public lands, right, that they do at the federal level, so, and what that could look like.
Okay, with that done,
Where are we?
we are at number 7, discussion.
Conditional use permits.
And it was asked by member Kearns to have some discussion about our conditional use permits and if there's a way to make it simpler, easier, not having them come up constantly, or have to, for the people that have to come back. Is that what it was, Jim? How do you?
Yes, you know, kind of, you know, we got time frame all over the board on the length of term. You know, some are 10 years, some are 25 years, some are forever. And how do we get it more balanced where some of these people don't have to come back as often when you know they're kind of automatically going to redo them?
Yeah, Adam, a couple of years ago, we had a golf course that was up and running, and their 20 years was up, and because of the acreage and the way it was written, it was gonna cost them like $20,000 to renew their conditional use permit. We changed something there, and I think we're sort of, I think is that your idea, Jim, that something like that wouldn't necessarily be coming back?
Right. Well, and churches.
Oh, and churches, yeah, that's
So the churches have a time frame on them. That's what surprised me.
okay, so that's what we're asking?
Yeah, and that's hats off to Renee going through this and her staff pulling all this stats together. There was some surprise statistics. Churches was one that jumped out. The overall quantity of active CUPs. This has been an initiative for Renee and her staff for the last maybe 2 years, 2+, to kind of get on top of these. And we've identified some that are just, those uses are dead and gone and they're never coming back. And so we were able to take those off the books. Others, some surprises, maybe some expansions, whatever that we're addressing and reeling back into what they should be doing or trying to get them moved in the right direction. So, but yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves in terms of, and Jim, you hit the nail on the head with one that jumped out to me was the conditional uses for churches. Most of them did not or were not intended. I think we've talked about that they didn't have time frames.
Yeah.
And then we came back with, I forget the exact number on here, but kind of scanned it, but 5 of them, 5 have a time frame on them. So what's special about those? I don't think much different. But
It's when they happen.
Well, the most recent one was just a few years ago, and there was a board member who's no longer on the board that was very adamant that to not set a time limit, you would be giving some unfair treatment for the church. And that's where the one with 50-year came from. That happened on the board floor a few years ago. And then there was one other one that sticks out in my mind. It's a church, but there's also some other associated uses with it. There's some residential as part of the church, and I think
Gotta be the nuns.
That wouldn't be the one out in
Ringo.
No, it's not that one.
No.
That one doesn't have a time limit.
Well, and a little history for everybody. Prior to roughly 2000, there was a question as to whether or not you could have a time limit at all as a conditional use. There was a case in Chicago that finally allowed it, and that was the first time any time frames were in there. Prior to that, it was the land zoning use. You said this land use was okay. You got that land use. It wasn't really until about 2000, and it had to do with a horse farm in Cook County. I mean, is what it went up to, and they said, no, you can put a time limit on it.
I
So,
think I know that one is in Norwich.
so prior to that time, all of them were unlimited. You passed a conditional use, you got that use on this property. The other thing that happened is that prior to UDO, our ordinance was set up that if you didn't want to ask for variation, you could ask for a conditional use in any ag zone. And no matter what the use was, you could call it a conditional use and ask for it, which is why you've got a whole list of things as you go, how did this get here? Because that was the backup. So you didn't have to do the variation standards, you could do a conditional use standards and say, we can do this here because we'll buffer it or we'll do whatever we're gonna do. So with that in the background, that's how we get, now we kind of swung the other side, we're saying 10 years, that's it, no matter what. 10 years in some instances doesn't make any sense, but unlimited probably doesn't make any sense either.
And to shine some light on that concept too, would be the last paragraph where 10 were approved of the 129 that have time limits, 42 have come through for renewal in those timeframes that have been up. 10 of them have been revised to have longer term limits or time limits than they had previously approved for. 3 were approved with shorter, and then the rest 29 were approved at the same mark. So status quo.
Any justification for the 3 that were approved with shorter time limits? Is there?
There have been problems, violations on the property, and the zoning board recommended shorter time to check in on them again.
Okay.
Because enforcement is difficult in that it's not just time limits. You have 249 projects with unique conditions on all of them. So from an enforcement standpoint, it's hard to manage.
So as we've been trying to get our arms around this for the last couple of years, it's been it's been engagement with, what was the status of it when it was approved and what's the status of it out there. So setting up that time and kind of going through that business. And what we've tried to get this on now is about a 1 year check-in, and maybe it's a year and a half just as things shake out. But yeah, it's definitely a staffing capacity issue at this point.
Good, Carolyn.
I'm sorry. Well, you had mentioned something about automation somewhere in here. So where are you in that and how will that help? And will it help enough?
We're hopeful. So yeah, it's our permit system. SmartGov is the name of that. And right now we've kind of got this ad hoc system that we've cobbled together with DevNet or spreadsheets or calendar items and all that. And it's functional, but the new system will have a module for conditional uses for zoning land use applications. That will allow us to have, whether it's email notifications out to the applicant to say, hey, you're due for an inspection, call to confirm, and then it'll also have that in-house. So it'll be a central hub. So it modernizes the process. It won't eliminate staff travel time and inspections and findings and any of those corrective measures that will take time to iron out.
But it should allow you a more robust reminder system. Okay, this is coming up, and it's not like having to find 3 or 4 different places to find where that information is. I know it's not going to change boots on the ground.
It puts in place accountability for both the applicant and then our responsibility and accountability for following up in that promised time frame. Really is where it is.
But it does sound like following up at least somewhat regularly is helpful because you get the violations from some people if there's not the accountability.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
So I have a couple things and one comment, not so much concern. One comment is any changes we make is unintended consequences of our changes. So that's one thing I'd be concerned about, that we're very careful what we do. The other question I have though is the 3 that, I think there was 3 of them that show violation, their term was up and they didn't renew it. So the question on those is, are those businesses still in existence?
That's what we're in the process of figuring out. So there were just kind of random spreadsheets and lists all over the place. So the senior planner, Anna Kurtzman, the last 2 years has been organizing all the CUP ordinances into binders by township. And then now that she's gotten that all organized, the planners and inspectors are going out, and that's the first question, is this even still here? And we found a number of them already that we've taken off the books because they just no longer exist.
Right.
And these are some that we just haven't gotten to get out and inspect yet.
So, and then as they come up for expiration, like in the next year, do we send a notification out to them, like a certified notification or something, so that we can confirm that, yes, they did receive it?
We will. And we also have Derek, our code enforcement officer, will start a violation case as well.
Okay.
But
I just, found that they didn't exist. Like, it's not being used for what the conditional use permit for, but it's still an active CUP that somebody could go back and do what they were.
No, once that you are no longer, the CUP isn't operational for 12 months, it's
Okay.
done.
And then,
It
okay,
expires.
then it's expired automatically.
Yeah.
But we would have to know that and somehow validate that. Some,
Yeah.
okay.
So we've gone out, the inspections we've done have just been the obvious ones.
Okay.
That it's obvious the use hasn't been there for quite some time.
Is the ski slope still in here someplace?
It's not.
There was a ski slope approved when we were working on the UDO, whatever, a while ago. There was one that was a ski slope, and it hadn't been, obviously, a ski slope in a long, long time. But there, but
Yeah,
it was
no,
technically
no.
still on the books back when we were doing UDO. And I don't
Is that
remember.
Algonquin?
No,
Raging Buffalo, yeah.
I don't remember where it was. I just
Okay.
remember thinking, it's just not where I think of ski slopes.
Spring Grove still exists in the county? I don't even know if that's in the
The
county.
movie director out on Reese Road built a ski slope.
Okay.
I think it's the Raging Buffalo.
Yeah, which that's definitely
Snowbird.
going.
Yeah, we have a couple
yeah.
of private
Oh.
ones.
Treelord, right?
I don't think that's operating anymore.
I'm not sure, I would say it might be in Kane County though.
I would think,
But Raging
That's
Buffalo's
like-
gone. Yeah, they
That's
closed it.
gone.
It's-
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's all
gone.
ripped out.
Yeah.
So Jim, you're the one that instigated this conversation a little bit, so I'll put it on you. Are you advocating one way or the other for no time limit, some
I'm
kind of?
advocating that we put in some at least uniformity. So like if it's some of these, agritourism and all that, I think we should leave them, those should not have time limits. Because they, as long as they're active. Because to me, those, and I'll say Tom's in Huntley, and we have a lot of them in the county. But example, Tom's in Huntley, he has to come through. But all of a sudden, if all the developments and somebody says, well, we don't like them there anymore. And then all of a sudden it gets some opposition, and then the county doesn't, the board doesn't reapprove them. And yet these people built a lifetime to be there. The only way they should have to go away is if they want to go away, as long as they're not violating things, ordinances. So that's part of my thing on the agritourism. I think they ought not have to come back. I do understand, though, the landscaping and everything else. I understand the time frame that the board did, but it's not uniform. So I would like to see either 10, 15, or a 20-year, that they all fall under that scope at some point. We just gave solar farms unlimited because of the state, of course, is what we say. I still disagree with that, but that's one reason I like Nora today, that maybe she can bring some of that to it.
Yeah.
And then I see, farm equipment and auto repairs, there's different ones out there. But they're all over the board. And I can say, for full disclosure, one of these on here is one that I did, it's coming up. But when I did it, I said, let's try, to my attorney, I said, let's try for 25 years. And they approved it. But that one's coming up, and I no longer am associated with that, but they still do what I did. So
I think yours should be done every 6 months.
Yeah, I wanna know, so we can, wait, are you commercial store, what, I don't know what.
The one I had done was, I'm looking for it on here.
It's on the second page of the list.
It came up as retail sales, that was the key to it. But that wasn't, the scope of it also, there was a lot of stores there because I used a lot of wholesale storage in there and for equipment. So that one's on there, even though it's listed only as retail sales, there's a lot more to that one.
Okay, I was wrong.
So I don't know if these other ones are the same way.
There's more to them. I just kind of lumped them into it.
Yes. But that was 25 years ago we did that almost. And so that one's gonna come up and do you renew it for 25 years? Do you just say it's there? I don't know. And that's what I'm saying. There are different times all over the place. And so how do we set this without unintended consequences? And that's the problem, unintended consequences. Because somebody like me gets a B on the whole situation. It says, well, let's change this, and then all of a sudden it affects these people down the road that we didn't really want to affect.
Well, I think if we sorted, I mean, I'm looking at the list, and I know this is a spreadsheet, so sorting it should be relatively simple. But if we sorted it by types of use, it might be easier to say, okay, let's look at all the commercial storage. Or let's
every
look at all
landing
the,
strip, every,
you know, I mean, I do notice it's nice that we have cemeteries as a 0 time limit, because I really don't want to be moving them. But, you know, I mean, those are the, but I think it would be helpful to do that. I mean, I just counted up, you've got 41 solar farms, you got 38 churches, you got 32 landscape shops. And I didn't, that's just the ones I just counted as we're sitting here. I think those, you know, when you sort it out that way, you might have a better idea of what clusters, and maybe we talk about these things as a group and say, if you're gonna do commercial storage, you know, what does that mean? Or what's our ramifications? And you know, maybe that's what we want to look at. And same thing with churches. I know the circumstance of the churches. I always remember having some of those discussions. It's like, if you were going to build a building as a church, you're not taking it down. Right. I mean, you know, so, and you're going to spend 30 years paying for it. So really, do you want to be in that situation? And especially with, you know, the RLUP, religious, I forgot the rest of the thing. That's the statute that we get sued under if we say no. So I think you put that in one category. That doesn't mean that you can't have other regulations on them. They still have to be a church, but you know, I would handle that different than I would outside outdoor landscaping storage. So I think we could get some guidelines that might help overall, but I think you got to look at what the uses are. You can't just say because it's conditional use, we're going to let it all be unlimited. Right. I don't see that going.
And I don't disagree with you on that. I agree with you on the uniformity and categorizing it even closer, breaking it down even closer. But when we do that breakdown, we're going to make sure that, like the property that I was talking about is classified under your thing that says retail. Well, that actually mirrored Tom's Market, actually, when the intention of that was to mirror Tom's Market. So I could retail, you know, bird cages, which under feed, you can't retail them. So that's what that was set up that way. And then also the storage. So they mirror those. There's a lot of them, like Joe says, are very similar, but we have to make sure the way we have them listed, that we go through those and make sure that we don't apply stuff. So.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I brought it up was to get uniformity.
Uniformity, okay. So,
you know, and this goes to just one more, just to, something, I don't know, is this taken into consideration or not, but Joe, you and I have had this conversation where we chase business out of the county and push them into the municipalities. You know, and when Jim says unintended consequences, do we push a a really nice agritourism into a municipality and lose them because we put a limit on their conditional use. You know, whereas we can't work with them and give them this flexibility so as to not push them out of the county. So unintended consequences should be taken into consideration for something that's a large business, that a large agritourism possibly. So we should keep that in mind also, I think.
Those agritourism businesses really, they do a spectacular job.
Right.
You know, in springs and summer, I mean, you talk about bringing people through the door.
Exactly.
Those,
You gotta be careful.
I understand, but they still do a great job.
They do.
So can I ask one, like a devil's advocate kind of thing? So what would be the downside? What is the potential problem with unlimited? Just to, like, talking about unintended consequences, if we go unlimited, what would be the potential? Do you guys have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts on that, or can we?
My opinion is you would lose control. I mean, it's almost like rezoning it, it'd be there forever. The idea that if they started to change their business, went from agritourism to something more less desirable, and where do you come in and say, we're not gonna let you do that anymore? How do you, I mean, but there's conditions, I understand, but people can fudge that around.
Well, you know
And
what?
I can think of one too, Larry, 30 years ago, a rodeo grounds might have been, oh, give it to them. That's, we're gonna protect our heritage, and then all of a sudden, we're not so hip on, or the way they do their rodeos, right?
Right, well, that's what I wasn't even thinking about that, but there was that farm on Randall. It was very close to the tollway, and it was a farm you could go in, and it was fun. You brought the kids. I actually never did, because by that time my kids were older, but it looked like it was fun. But then it grew into like a carnival every year. It was not.
Were you talking about Charlotte? That was at 20.
No, it was something chalet or something. It had like a Swiss theme to it.
I don't know, but it ended up being like a carnival all summer, as opposed to what you would think of in agritourism, right? Where it was about getting kids onto the land and the farm and things like that. So it really did change. And so to that point.
It's on the northeast side, northeast corner of Randall and 90, or not the corner, but.
Correct, you're right, northwest, yes.
And of course, development took that out.
Took it out, right.
I mean, that guy's very
There's
rich.
currently one that brings in all the
He sold 3 or 4 times.
things and rides and stuff.
Well, they're almost all do.
Some will do the blow up, but there's a point at which it becomes a carnival versus like the bouncy things for kids so they can burn off energy, or the mazes and stuff like that.
But the revenue that those properties, and it's not a McHenry County, but look at Gilbert's example. The number of people they go through there every day is just amazing. The revenue that brings into the county.
It's not estimated.
And so I don't want to deter that.
What kind of direction do we want to give staff?
I'd say break it into categories and give us some suggestions.
Okay, bring it back categorized. Sure. And I don't know that you guys need to put time limits on it, but maybe if there's some reason that you would have to put a time limit on, or a suggestion for a time limit. Sort of like what we've been talking, you heard one thing church gets a little bit more compared to implement store or something.
Sure.
And then we'll discuss it at the next meeting, or you want 2 months? I don't think
What else we have?
I'll be on. So, yeah, that might not give you a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening?
Well, I would anticipate the June meeting being, Renee's gonna be out of town for a couple weeks, and, what's that?
How dare me?
Yeah, unbelievable. And then June, I think we'll have a lot to discuss. I believe we're bringing through the 2050 plan as well. So I think that would be next month. So July would probably be the best opportunity.
Okay. And if you get it put together, we'll get it on the agenda. If not, we'll shoot for July. Does that sound good? Go ahead, Carolyn.
Just one question, then other than these renewals of the permits and uses, what mechanism is in place to see if something is in violation? Like, I mean, that's just, the question would be, what are we doing, if anything, now? So if we go to a system where it's, you know, indefinite, what do we have in place to make sure that it's still in compliance?
So, I mean, it's that constant contact. So when we start building up that routine of the inspections, everybody that comes through now, we tell them that they're going to be on kind of this routine inspection.
Okay.
You know, and to keep communicating. If you have things that may evolve your business or change it, we do have people that come through here and they have to do a renewal or modification because maybe they changed their boundary or maybe they changed their scope. And sometimes that's well then, you know, right now we'll eliminate that until we get to that renewal point or something along those lines. So the software is definitely going to be an ally there to be able to keep that organized without dedicating a staff member to strictly coordinating all of that. So that'll be a big change. So we're confident that we can maintain that. It's you know, we don't know exactly what the big issues will be, but we know that there will be something that comes up that totally bucks that schedule.
I have one other thing that we might want to look at. Instead of just saying you're back in for full review or not, is there a mechanism we could do an administrative review for somebody that's never had a problem? You know, like, could you walk in and say, you know what, we'll give you 10 more years automatically without going through the whole shooting match because, you know, you've complied with everything and there's no issues and that may be another way to attack this. To just say, you know, we're not gonna, you know, because let's face it, yeah, you've probably got 10 or 15% that are problems because that's just human nature. But I'd be willing to bet you that 75, 80, 85% of this, the reason you haven't seen these is because there's not a problem.
Right.
Not an issue. And I don't think we should drag somebody through the whole zoning process to renew what they have, as long as there's not a, you know.
It's pretty tough to do this without an expensive attorney too, on top of it.
I know. I used to do them.
Right.
But I do think there's and I don't know whether there's a way to structure that. We may have to bring the state's attorney's office in, but
right.
that might be a way to, around the unlimited versus, you know, maybe put something that says, you know, staff will be allowed to do an automatic review at 10 years and then we'll see you at 20 or something like that. And if we put it in the ordinance, maybe we could do it that way in the future.
There would be
I think there's some options.
It could fall to a lot of responsibility on staff when they start considering the land use around it and everything else involved. Because, you know, some of these conditional use permits were put there for a time because we know the land use around it's going to change.
Or with that thought moving forward, put that in at, you know, it's a 25-year, but renewable, understaffed, you know, with no problems. You know, to correct it moving forward, if you will, Joe, you know.
No, right, I'm not saying go back and change everybody's, but when somebody comes in, you know, if it's the second time in or the third time in, and nothing's changed, really, why are we making some poor owner do that? You know, I mean, there ought to be a way to say, you know what, you've been a good corporate citizen, you've been here for 10 years, and there's no complaints, there's no violations. You know, that part of the county hasn't changed dramatically. Why would you not, you know, it's going to be a rubber stamp anyway. Why not stop somebody going through that whole process and that cost? So, anyway.
There was a viable way to do it and not get into
I don't
legal troubles.
I don't want to be in trouble either, but there ought to be a mechanism to do that.
I agree.
There have to be some pretty set guidelines where we do it for one person, the next person.
No, I'm not saying don't have guidelines for everybody, but
No, I get it, but just like you said,
You might save some business owner $5,000.
I think that would be great, but the next guy that comes in and it's not approved and he has to spend the $5,000, it's gonna be, what were you looking at that he was passed through automatically and why this guy wasn't?
Yeah.
And maybe those guidelines can be put in place, I just.
Yeah, well, we'll have to explore a lot of those
You have to
circumstances.
stick to the standards that are in the UDO for approval of conditional use. So you would just rely on those standards again. But I'm wondering if there's a way that we could just send them straight to the county board.
Bingo.
Because then we wouldn't have to charge what we charge for the renewals. And if they've got the same site plan that they had 20 years ago, and the staff plat review committee is looking at the same thing, the zoning board's looking at the same thing, I get it, I agree.
Yeah. And I'm for cutting red tape wherever possible.
Yeah, rules should not be put people out of
Yeah, I
business.
sort of like that thought.
Yeah.
Straight to the county board.
Because
yeah, I
then
don't
the state
know.
statute requires the public hearing, it requires county board.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right,
But just
we'll explore it.
if that changed, that statute can be changed.
Yeah.
State.
Can I answer a couple questions that came up earlier?
Sure.
Thank you. 5 acres, Carolyn. I was close on
You were
that
close.
property, yeah. And the supermajority isn't required when there's a denial on a map amendment, but it is for the variation. And these people are also asking for a variation. So to complicate things further,
We have to have,
you have to have a supermajority for the variation portion of the second part of their request. Yes.
And we're gonna go to the state's attorney with that to, we're gonna ask the state's attorney
I
the best
will,
way to
yeah,
handle
and
that.
ask him,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's an
give him
interesting
advice.
it
That's
might
gonna
be
be
easier to
so
approve it the way
confusing.
they applied. Just be done with it.
But right now, the way they applied, would have to be a supermajority because it has that one
Yes,
portion of it has
because
the
you have
variation
that
to it. So,
denial.
It's 15, supermajority is now 15 or 14?
15, right?
That's 14.
Oh, thank you.
14, okay.
Okay. Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, going back to your time limit, what Joe said, when you have a church, it's a building, it's gonna be unlimited 0. There are about 3 or 4 that have a time limit. Why would they have a time limit? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think
There's a number.
There's 5, right? 5
Yeah,
5 limits.
Yeah, and
Certain-
there was the only 2 that I know of off the top of my head. There was one where there were other uses associated with the church,
Oh.
residential uses, and maybe even daycare, that
An
sort of thing.
external or exception. Okay.
And then the one we had just a few years ago that got the 50-year time limit was just an individual board member felt that it was unfair to give a church no time limit and felt that a time limit should be imposed.
Okay.
I'm cool.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Future topics?
I
Executive
have
session.
something-
Go ahead, Jen.
Topic, and I don't know if we'll even act on this, but, so, a strategic plan calls for goals of workforce houses or high-density residential, where it's like, at one point it says high density of 8 homes per acre. And I know in the county, their IEPA would never allow septic systems on such small single-family sites, but are they around the Midwest even allowing 6 homes per acre, 5 homes per acre with shared septic systems? Could we possibly consider workforce housing in the county that would allow 3 or 4 or 5 houses on an acre with a shared septic to make that even possible to help come up with workforce housing?
It's feasible. I mean, it's feasible, yeah.
Could you show us where it's done and what the zoning codes are, or, you know, who does that? Who allows that, right?
Don't we have one down by Marengo?
Yeah,
We have
so
one,
yeah.
yeah, the one that's coming to mind
No,
for
but
me is in
general practices
Algonquin.
though, that's not a general practice. Are
Not
there other
right,
parts of the
right.
state or
Yeah,
the
right,
Midwest where it's
yeah.
a general practice, like, yeah, no problem, we'll do it under this?
Okay.
So specific to septic systems. as
Well,
on-site
because
waste
isn't that
treatment
the one reason why a guy could never do it, right? You're too close to the well, you can't move or put a septic on that lot.
It usually it becomes a cost-effective decision,
Yeah.
whether or not it's
Yeah.
actually gonna be feasible. And we talked about the Henning project and
And
Blackstone's
look
got
what
a
happened
lot
to
of
it,
work.
right? We never
Yeah.
gave them the density, and then it hurt the system. But truly, I mean, if we really want to do, what we say moving forward, to come up with workforce housing or affordable housing, you're only going to do it if so many people could share a septic or, make that, otherwise it's not going to happen.
Is the
Right.
septic system that's in the trailer park that's on Ridgefield Road, doesn't that go across the ComEd lines to like the neighboring farm field?
It goes due east, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they just redid that a couple of years ago, but that's a good example of shared systems.
But
And it's it's a whole different category. So
Right.
community wells and all the different setbacks
Yeah.
that would be required. So is it feasible? Yes, but on a 1 acre parcel or something like that, you're gonna be limited by those types of restrictions.
Right.
The idea, I guess, the overarching concept is that those developments go towards the municipalities. And you mentioned strategic plan, I think you're talking about the comp plan.
Mhm.
So the comp plan, and we've talked about that at length too, Joe, is that I think the language needs to be hardened to say that that's the real intent, is that this is, those higher, medium, and densities, developments would be in these either infill or right along the strips of the municipalities where the infrastructure is available.
Right, so
That's
Spelling
truly
it
the
out,
intent.
right?
And-
Spelling it out.
And at
to
least
make it
that's,
make sense.
that would be my recommendation if there's a change that to match that intent.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's other ideas, certainly we'll follow whatever you're leading.
So is there a best practice for 2 homes or 3 homes to the acre that we could at least, give a shot for that developer that wants to do a workforce house, right? Or
Yeah.
wants to make houses a little bit more affordable.
You have to
Is there a
cluster,
general-
John.
I'm
One
sorry.
way it's gonna happen is you're gonna have to cluster them.
Well, exactly,
You're gonna have a
Joe.
conservation design, you're gonna cluster the houses here, and you're gonna have the septic around it.
Why am I not thinking, I'm thinking Wonder Lake. I mean, wasn't that
Yeah.
what it is?
So Wonder
Well,
Lake's a
Baby
mess.
Beach, I mean, there's a
But
lot
all
of
those homes
communities.
are, I mean, they.
Some of them are, they have different community wells and different private septics, sewer programs. It's a,
But
yeah,
as
it's a
to
little bit of a mess.
unintended consequences, again, you put 5 homes out there, all sharing a septic, and now all of a sudden they need a new septic system in there, but only 3 of them wanna pay for it. And you get 2 that don't wanna pay for it. Well,
You'd have a homeowners association, but that's always tough to enforce too.
you gotta think, affordable housing, you don't have the money to begin with to pay for something
Well,
like that.
yeah, but that's just like townhome projects. Jim, you have to have an association set up.
I don't think they have any.
That sets for it.
I think, like in our 2050 plan, I don't think that affordable housing type cluster housing like that has any business out in the country, because you can't sustain it, can't service it.
Yeah, they self-level, in terms of where they can go and where they would, where they
Right,
want
it's
to.
that's a good term for
What'd you
that,
say?
self-level,
Sorry.
they do.
They kind of self-level, in terms of, this is, it's just not cost
In
effective
terms
for
of what it can
development.
support.
Economy
Right,
takes.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
the
the
economy
infrastructure
controls.
available
Right.
and everything else.
Well, and
Closer to a
you gotta
train
look at the
station, whatever.
differences. Kane County has managed to put private shared septics and sewer systems in reasonably well. Pete mentioned it the other day. He's here, so I don't want to talk behind his back since he's right here. But Lake County tends to have the Moraine Hills system, where they organize the system and said, we're going to provide sewer to this whole township type thing. And I'm not sure that as a board, we want to start sewer plants.
Not at all.
Nope. And that's not something that I thought we wanted to see.
That's not fair to the taxpayer. It's just not.
Anything else, or?
No,
Go ahead.
I will reach out to, one of your questions was, is there kind of a guideline?
Yeah, I'd love to find that out.
Health will be our resource for that.
Mhm.
P&D wouldn't have the expertise in that.
Yeah.
So maybe they have kind of a ballpark that you can kind of talk, but I don't know. they have some creative systems out there that can make things condensed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else or motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Joe, seconded by Carl.